What up, y'all? It's Kristyn and Ryan. We're here with another episode.
What's good?
It is April 23rd, 2020. It's day 1,000 of quarantine. Yeah, we still just at home kicking it.
Yep.
So today's episode, we wanted to talk about a book that we're reading, which we mentioned in a previous episode, but it's The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I'm reading it for the second time. This is Ryan's first time reading this book.
Yeah.
And we just started. So we're going to be talking about this book chapter by chapter. That's the plan. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, for today, we're going to just be talking about chapter 1. And so if anybody has read this book, or if you're wanting to read this book and you haven't yet, you can go ahead and start and then come back to this episode and, check in with us here.
Yeah. I've been saying yeah like this whole time.
Well.
Well, I guess, just to get a small background. I don't know. It's, for me, this is my first time reading this book, but as in previous episodes, or the last episode, not last, but whatever episode we did, I did read, we read the New Earth book. Mm-hmm. And is that like more of an in-depth version of this, or is this like a...
No, I would say that it's both books are by Eckhart Tolle. They are both speaking about the same truth, basically living in the present. I think in the second one, it's been so long since I've read The Power of Now. The first time I read it was like in 2014, 2015. So I'm becoming familiar again with it. But they're very similar. They have the same principles, same truth and teachings in there. Yeah. But it's different. It's a different format. The Power of Now the format is more question and answer. So it's like a layout of questions that he's gotten from people and in seminars and things like that. And then he answers the questions. And the New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose, is a different, it's just a different style, but again, it's the same type of messaging. But I highly recommend you read both.
Yeah,
highly
it won't hurt at all to read both.
Yeah. So that's what we read a few months ago. Way longer than that, actually. Earth? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like last year.
It was last year, but yeah. So anyway, now we're gonna just dive into The Power of Now. So just a quick rundown of like the introduction. So in the intro, he just talks about the origins of the book, how he came to the truths in the book, where he came, how he came to his own enlightenment, and where that has led to him, writing the book and also guiding other people into their own enlightenment. And the most powerful moment for him was shortly after his 29th birthday. He was just feeling very, just in a very dark place. And he just describes that a little bit. And he talks about a moment where he couldn't sleep because he just felt the strong urge to basically end his life. He was just at the worst point in his life. And what he says here is, this is like in the intro on page 4, he says, "I cannot live with myself any longer. This was the thought that kept repeating itself in my mind. Then suddenly I became aware of what a peculiar thought it was. Am I one of two? If I cannot live with myself, there must be two of me, and I and the self that I cannot live with. Maybe, I thought, only one of them is real. So it's in this moment that he realizes the voice in his head is something outside of himself. It's his true self observing the outside of himself speaking to him, which sounds crazy.
Yes, it does.
It sounds crazy, but when you read it,
it
makes sense.
It'll make a little bit more sense.
It'll make more sense. And as you get deeper into the book, and again, as he's describing that enlightenment, you'll come to a better understanding what he means. But it's basically the core of that is that the thoughts in your head and the suffering and the pain that you feel is not you. That is not your true core self. So he had that realization, and it completely changed his life. He went through a long period of bliss after that. And then he eventually got back to reconnecting with his, I guess, material self and his body and things like that. Okay, this sounds so strange, but just trust me. Just trust me, it'll make sense when you read the intro. So yeah, and he also just kind of outlines like what the structure of the book and what he'll be talking about, and just how the layout is going to be, and just what to expect as you continue reading. So chapter 1, which starts on page 11, it is titled "You Are Not Your Mind." And here he talks about that exact realization that he had, that your mind and your thoughts are not you. So yeah, so Ryan, what are some thoughts you were having? I guess if you want to go section by section.
Yeah, so I mean, this section, it's kind of more of like it feels more introductory to kind of explain the whole concept of what he's trying to teach. And I mean, after reading A New Earth, it makes a lot of sense, because I understand what he means. I think this one is, I mean, basically everything that you think as far as like the inner voice, the thing that you hear all the time, all day, every day, is not you. I'm about to say the physical. No, it's the conscious, like, being part. It's like it's weird to try to not understand, but explain it. But I mean, to me, how I take it is that the person that's hearing the voices is who you are, not the one that's saying it. So is more just being the observant entity. But yeah, so he speaks about the fact that the observer is your true self, and the voices is what you've been conditioned to believe. It's all the things from your past, all the fears that you have from about the future or impending future, what you think the future is going to be, but it all stems from your past and your conditioning, and that is not your actual true self speaking. Your true self is listening to the person speaking, which, man. So the first section here, when he's which is titled "The Greatest Obstacle to Enlightenment," he talks about what enlightenment actually means, and he talks about the ego, which is all encompassing of the mind, and how the ego tries to put the idea in your head that enlightenment is something that is superhuman, it's supernatural, like you can't achieve it, only certain people achieve it, and that way it keeps you from getting to that place of being present and realizing that enlightenment is already in you. Right.
You are that. And because the goal of the ego is to keep you in a suffering state and to keep you into a mental state where you're constantly thinking and you're being controlled by your mind, not by your true inner self, which is your enlightened part. Yeah. And he talks about, Buddha's definition of enlightenment. He says on page 12, it's the last paragraph. He's like, I love the Buddha's simple definition of enlightenment as the end of suffering. There is nothing superhuman in that, is there? Of course, as a definition is incomplete. It only tells you what enlightenment is not, no suffering. But what's left when there is no more suffering? The Buddha is silent on that, and his silence implies that you'll have to find out for yourself. So, and I think that's a double meaning too, that within that silence, that's where you find the enlightenment.
Yeah, because with silence comes, it makes you be still, and with the stillness comes enlightenment or
yes.
Peace and
stillness.
Being.
Stillness. Stillness makes you present. It centers you.
Yeah.
So then when you're silent and you're present, that's when you are able to tap into that inner you, the true you, and the enlightened you. That's what I took from that.
It was a part at the top of 12, page 12, where he was talking about, like, he had this I guess this metaphor, this kind of like this story where there was a beggar, like someone on the corner asking for some change or whatnot, and he asked the guy, do you have any money or you have any change or anything like that? And the guy said, no, I don't have anything. And then he asked the guy asked the beggar, saying that, hey, what's this box? And he said, I don't know what's in the box. It's just he had it for so long, he didn't really care what was in it. And then he looked and he told him, go ahead and look in the box, and there was like gold and everything that he actually needed. So it's like that metaphor is where the enlightenment is like almost like a visual or a mental image of what enlightenment is more of it's the knowing of your inner self. And basically he broke down like the difference between the beggar and the person that will give something. But he was saying that those who have not found their true wealth, which is the radiant joy of being and the deep unshakable peace that comes with it, are beggars. Even if they have great material wealth, they are looking for outside for scraps or pleasure or fulfillment, for validation, security, or love, while they have a treasure within that not only includes all those things, but is infinitely greater than anything the world can offer. So it's like basically just saying everything that you will want is from within. Like, peace is found from within, and if you are looking outside, you're looking the wrong way.
Right. Yeah, that's the story of the beggar is on page 11, and then that quote that Ryan just read was on page 12. That's
top of 12.
Of 12, yeah. But yeah, for sure, it's like people in general always have their hand out looking outside and looking for other people to fulfill what they need, and really it's all within you. Like, it's nowhere else. So this whole time, like, the beggar spent 30 years begging for people,
right,
and to hand him something, and no one had anything for him, and lo and behold, he was sitting on top of gold the entire time.
Right. So
yeah, it's a clear visual representation of that for sure. So the section about this starts on page 14, but it's a section within a section. So the question of what is the greatest obstacle to experiencing this reality, like experiencing enlightenment, it's like when he breaks down, like you're identifying with your thoughts in your mind, and that was pretty powerful. Like just saying you have this idea that whatever you think you are, but really you want to stay away from that because your thoughts are not actually true. They're conditioned.
Yeah.
So you are not your thoughts.
Right.
And that kind of flips the whole script on what I feel like we've been taught a lot, whereas like you think, therefore I am. So you know, like whatever you think you become.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, wait a minute. Like Eckhart is kind of saying the opposite. And Ryan, I know you were talking, before we got on here, you were talking about that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was in a later part of the chapter where it really hit me. But this whole, like, I put the book down, but I'm gonna pick it back up later. But I've been reading Think and Grow Rich, which is really the polar opposite of this book. Mm-hmm. Because basically it tells you to think about what you want, who you want to be. The more you think about it, the more you feel it. And with those deep feelings, you will become that. And at the end of the day, I mean, according to Eckhart, it's the wrong way of trying to think about, it's the wrong way of actually just living your life, because if you're trying to get fulfillment, then you shouldn't be thinking about, it shouldn't be in your thoughts, it should be from within you. With Think and Grow Rich, like it was a part in I don't want to skip ahead, but a lot of the basis of Think and Grow Rich is you have to have a strong desire, and with that desire becomes the ability to actually take some action into what you want out of life.
And that's actually the same thing in The Secret, which is another book that we've read.
Yeah.
Which is also powerful. It talks about the law of attraction and you speaking out and basically acting as though what you want you already have. So it acts on the law of attraction.
Right.
And it's again about like what you think. It's like thoughts you think,
right,
which attracts things to you.
Right.
With little to no effort. Because you thought it, so now it's yours. So I guess this makes me question, like, what is the middle ground with that? Like, what is the middle ground between what Eckhart Tolle is saying here about being present and not being of your thoughts, but then also on the flip end, utilizing your mind, which is, he says, is a tool, which it is.
Yeah.
Utilizing your mind to manifest the things that you want, but not become your mind. So it's like, where is that balance at?
Yeah, I mean, that'd be a hard thing for me to even think about, because I mean, it's so easy to get identified with what you think, and the whole point of the psychology of the Think and Grow Rich and I'm about to say the power now. The Secret. The Secret is what you think will become reality. So it's like if you say you rich in your mind, the more you say it, the more you believe it. The more you believe it, the more you will go for it.
Right.
So it's like, in one instance is Eckhart saying, don't identify yourself with your thoughts. But on the other side of the token, was it? I'm about to say Jonah Hill. Is it Jonah Hill?
No.
It's not Jonah Hill. Napoleon Hill. Jeez. I don't know why I'm thinking Jonah Hill.
Isn't that an actor?
I think it is.
I'm like, what?
Napoleon Hill is saying, the more you think about it, the more you basically identify yourself with it, the more likely you will be that.
So I think here it's because yes, you do. Okay, because I think what they are saying when it's like you think what you think you become, it's like you have the power to control your mind. So you put the thoughts in there that you want, because you know what Eckhart's talking about is like he says at some point in the book or in this chapter that 80 to 90% or 90 to whatever, no, 80 to 90% of our thoughts are repetitive and they're destructive.
Yeah.
So when, you know, the other people that we've been reading, when they're, and even listening to,
right,
when they're saying you have to change the thoughts in your mind, you basically unconditioning yourself. Like you're setting new patterns and new thought patterns so that the 80 to 90% isn't destroying you.
Yeah, it's a constructive.
But I think where it comes with what Eckhart is saying is that there needs to be a detachment. There needs to be a level of detachment.
Yeah, there it is.
So it's like, yes, you want your mind to work for you. You don't want your mind running you. You want to have your mind programmed to where it's working for you.
Right.
So you have all those thoughts of like, I'm going to be rich, or it don't even have to be that. Whatever it is that you want, your goal, whatever it is that you desire, you put that into your head and that becomes the constant. Like you're always thinking about that. And that in turn like weeds out all the negative thoughts, all of the passive aggressive thoughts, all of the self-destructive thoughts, and it replaces it with the positive stuff that you want. But knowing that even then you are not that, like you are not the thoughts at the end of the day. You are not these material things that you may come to acquire and manifest in your life. You still have to have a level of detachment, because regardless whether you get that stuff or not, what really counts is in you. Right. So it's like that balance of the two.
Yeah, like on page 16, I kind of skipped ahead, but yeah, on page 16, he said that you believe that you are your mind. This is the delusion. The instrument has taken you over. So basically, like he's saying that, yeah, your mind is the instrument. It's the tool. Right. It works for you. Right. Don't let the tool work you. And I think that, I mean, the Power of Now and The Secret and Think and Grow Rich can work in your favor. It's just understanding like how you would set that distance between you and your thoughts. And the one big important thing that I think that Eckhart talked about is just identifying what the ego actually is. And his definition of the ego is a false sense of self, which in turns are your own thoughts and the mind. So that voice in your head is the ego. Right. And the ego, which we see, I'm starting to intertwine, but the ego, which he talks a lot about in New Earth as well, it is the ego is your material self, like your physical self. And it's at the end of the day, you are not your physical self. You're beyond your physical self. Yeah. Which is a whole nother
thing. But
I don't know if he explained that in the book later or not.
I can't remember in this one, but that's a New Earth. But it just kind of ties back into this, that you are not your thoughts, you are not your ego. Your ego wants to make you believe that is you, but it's not. It's not you.
And there was another part in here where it kind of it reiterates on basically your mind is a tool, is something to use for your betterment, but it's another way of kind of detaching your thoughts from your conscious being. And it's on page 17, top of 17. So I'm gonna kind of skip along here. So they're saying the beginning of freedom is the realization that you are not the possessing entity, the thinker. The moment you start watching the thinker, a higher level of consciousness becomes activated.
Right.
So it's like he's basically explaining like the moment you are actually listening to the voices in your head, or the voice that you always hear in your head, just listen to it, but don't get emotionally attached to it. That's when that separation between your mind and your conscious being starts to widen, and you actually start to feel that inner peace, that bliss that he's talking about, the enlightenment.
It's like observing those thoughts happening without judgment.
Right.
Because without judgment, then you know that it's not you speaking. You're just watching, just listening, like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because the moment you start believing that, that's when the spiral happens, and then your mind controls you at the end of the day. So, yeah. He talks a lot about that in that section there. There was something. Trying to hop around.
So I know it was a part in here. It's like later in that section. I think it's on. So it's on page 20, on the bottom of 20.
Yeah, that's where I was just looking, or I just got to. But
yeah, so this basically kind of further explains the not necessarily identifying, but the listening part. And well, no. This basically is almost like how you will be able to get to that enlightenment, the presence part, where so he is saying that just become intensely conscious of the present moment. This is the deeply satisfying thing to do. In this way, you draw consciousness away from mind activity and create a gap of no mind in which you are highly alert and aware but not thinking. This is the essence of meditation.
Yeah, so he talks about how to practice being present. And so meditation, yes, is one way, but also he goes on to explain just being present in an everyday activity. So if you're washing your hands, like, which we should all be washing our hands.
Please wash your hands. That 20 seconds can go fast if you're present.
Ooh, we got ashy hands around here for how much we wash our hands. But yeah, so as you're washing your hands, you're being aware of the water as it runs all over your hands, and how the soap feels, and how the smell of everything. It's like you're just taking that time to be present, and I think and to be in that moment.
Yeah, just taking all of it in.
Yeah.
Experiencing every sense that you have.
Right.
Listening to the water run, feeling the water and
the
soap and
I
smell.
think what's so important about that is because it's an everyday activity, which we do without seemingly to think, seemingly thinking.
It's an unconscious
practice. It's like we just do it, and then it's a means to an end, kind of thing. So instead of doing that, you're just taking the time to just be there. And that's the same with if you're washing dishes, if you're walking up the steps, if you're whatever it is, just those little moments. Like, you can take those moments to practice being more present. It doesn't always have to just be meditation. Like, meditation is one way, but just everyday ways of doing that, just an everyday activity. So I thought that was powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing about being present is to eliminate the ideas of past and future. So because when you think about the past, you harp onto the emotional part of it. If it's something even happy thoughts, or even like real painful thoughts, it's something that you hold on to and you try to bring with you, which the future can instill a lot of negative thoughts, because you bring things from the past that you would use to predict the future, but it's not necessarily true. So it's like basically just being present eliminates those parts of time.
Right. Yeah. Yep, because all we have is now. The past is just your conditioned self, and the future, which does not exist, is also your conditioned self. Right.
It's just imagine it.
You're imagining what could happen
based on your condition.
Right. Oh, well, okay. That was a lot of condition.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so moving forward, he, going into the next section, which starts on page 21, Enlightenment, Rising Above Thought. He just talks about how, your mind is an instrument, a tool, as we were just talking about, and how overthinking is actually an addiction, is a form of addiction. And that's, I think that's so true, because because how many times, even the saying, misery loves company.
Yeah.
Which I think, to me, is you want to stay, it's so much easier to stay in a conditioned mind, because it's that's what you know.
Right. And
so to be an overthinker and then just always overanalyzing or overthinking and being conditioned to think negative thoughts, and we all have that, and have all the 1,000 voices in our head going off and whatnot. And it's much easier to be I just can't control that, versus no, I can control that, because that's not me. It's not me speaking. It's much easier, and just a much easier way to be. And also it feeds into your ego, which is what your ego wants and to begin with anyway. So
yeah, I mean, what I seen, kind of what I picked up from this that struck me a lot was that when you try to combat those thoughts, those negative thoughts with positive thoughts, it's only feeding the addiction, because it's basically a false sense of peace. It's like someone taking a drug or someone taking a drink or something like that, and it gets them through that moment, but then once they come down, they need something again to get that. It's basically the same thing. It's like how you described it as pleasure, because pleasure turns back into pain eventually. Mm-hmm. So it really was a striking moment where I'm like, overthinking and that addiction to the thoughts is a ever going cycle if you don't disconnect yourself from that.
Right. Yeah, and he continues on talking about how overthinking basically kills creativity.
Oh,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
And us being two creatives, I think we know that this is true.
Yeah, for sure.
And what he says on page 24 is the mind is essentially a survival machine, attack and defense against other minds, gathering, storing, and analyzing information. This is what it is good at, but it is not at all creative. All true artists, whether they know it or not, create from a space of no mind, from inner stillness. And this is so true.
Yeah.
Because especially when I was heavy into writing poetry, I literally would sit and like I would just feel like the inspiration just kind of wave over me. I would sit and I would write, and it was almost like it was I can't even explain it. It was just like I would just write, it would just pour out. And then at the end, when I was done, literally just put the pencil down and I'm finished. And I would read it and I'm like, oh, wow, that all came out? Like, it's not, I don't want to say like it's a moment of like no thought necessarily, but it is like you get into like it's not like a trance necessarily.
Yeah, he specifically said
it's not a trance. It's not a trance, but it's like you just become so consumed with.
Yeah, you're hyper focused.
Like your mind just tunes out, and you just all that creative energy just comes out. And
I guess because I felt the same way. I guess my explanation would be like where my thought on it will be like time stood still.
Yeah.
Like at that point you don't really have any sense of time. Time
absolutely not.
Flies by.
Yeah.
Because you're so focused on what you're doing, and the creativity is just going through.
Right.
And then once you're done, you look up and it's like 3 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. That's kind of how how I take it.
It definitely takes you out of time for sure.
Yeah. It really is.
It takes you out of time. It takes you out of your thoughts. It takes you out of all of that.
Yep. And I guess we can move to the next section.
Yeah.
So it's emotion, the body's reaction to the mind.
Yes. Oh my God. Listen.
Yeah, I'm like, yo, like, I mean, I've heard a lot about this as far as it's in The Secret, it's in Think and Grow Rich as well, where they say the more you think about something, you have to, the only way it really is going to manifest is when you feel it, is when you have that emotional response. So I guess it's the closest thing to being real when you don't have it necessarily in front of you is the emotion. That's the most physical part of your thoughts. So
what he says right at the beginning of this section on 25, he says, mind, in the way I use the word, is not just thought. It includes your emotions as well as all unconscious mental, emotional, reactive patterns. Emotion arises at the place where mind and body meet. It is the body's reaction to your mind, or you might say a reflection of your mind in the body. So I actually go to, I have a counselor, and I have counseling sessions like once a week or bi-weekly, whichever I'm feeling at the time. But a lot of times that's the one thing that my counselor starts pointing out. If I'm having a certain emotion, or I'm having some kind of bodily reaction to something, like I'm feeling some tension in my chest or I'm feeling something in my shoulders, it's usually like in my chest and my shoulder area. She checks me on it and is like, okay, like just like feel that, like just sit here and feel that. What is the emotion that's coming out from that? And then from the emotion, from the body response to the emotion to the mind, it's like working backwards. It's like your body's reaction, the emotion, your mind, because really it all stems from your mind. Your mind is what created the emotion is what created the body reaction. And through that practice, I've gotten much better at that. Like I can feel when I'm like not addressing something, is usually when I'm not addressing something, or my emotions are so high, or like I'm so high sprung that I start having literally having bodily reactions, and I have to sit in that. I'm starting to train myself to sit in that and feel that, because that cues to a lot of stuff that you may not even realize that you're thinking, because it's such a subconscious thing. So it's like that connection between the mind and body. It's like emotion is kind of like the gateway right there. Yeah. It's like that's the connector.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy because I don't know. I don't think I came up with this quote, but it stuck with me. Mm-hmm. But just like thinking, saying where the mind goes, the body follows. That's like basically what it is. Like, he even mentioned that when you have like someone question, like, well, my mind says one thing, but then my body responds a different way. What is the truth? And he was saying that your body is more than likely the truth, right? Because your mind is the one that's thinking and telling you to lie. Right. So it's usually he's basically saying like listen to your body, because that's the more true reaction and the true thought, because it's the first thing that your mind sends your body. Right. So
yeah, and it is so true, man. Like, and he talks further about how, you know, those emotions and that bodily response is what creates disease a lot of times, and the suffering, because you have all these thoughts that are turning into emotions, and you're not addressing the emotions, and so it just builds up, and it turns into, you know, body responses. So it can create disease, it can create more suffering. It's a lot. So seriously, y'all, like check in with your body because it alerts you to a whole lot.
It sure does.
And just trace that and get in touch with your emotion, and then that leads to what you're actually thinking, which is the root of everything. Yep. So that's the message there. And detach. Throw it out. Like, no, just observe without judging. That's the main key there. But yeah, let's see. So yeah, he just touches on that, and so he just talks more in that section about the mind, body and mind connection. And also someone brought up a good point about, so this is on page 29, and someone, you know, at the very top here, it was like, I was going to ask, what about positive emotions such as love and joy? And he says they are inseparable from your natural state of interconnectedness with being. So the love and joy is a part of you automatically. That is like the inner, you know, the inner part of you, the inner enlightened you is love and joy. So there, you know, he just talks about how you don't have to seek that out. Again, it's not an external thing. Yeah. It is internal. Yeah. You have it already. You have to just tap into that. So I thought that was powerful too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he did, and he got into, I think it was on the next page where he talked about like relationships and stuff. Yeah. Where he was saying that, let me see, where was it?
You talking about at the top here? at the top of 30.
Yeah. So, I mean, I got something here where he was saying that I'm actually going to be bottom of 29. So he was saying that the unenlightened mind-identified condition, what is sometimes wrongly called joy, is the usually short-lived pleasure side of the continuously alternating pain-pleasure cycle. Pleasure is always derived from something outside you, whereas joy arises from within.
Right. So it's like peace and joy is within. Everything else, like, is external and temporary.
Yeah, peace, joy, love, internal. Pleasure is external.
Right.
Because typically that's where you would find it.
Right. And I don't think he's saying don't enjoy those things. What he's saying is
understand that is not joy, peace, and love.
Right. And it's temporary.
Yeah.
So be detached from it. Like, don't try to find your fulfillment in those things. Like, that's only temporary, because once it'll bring you pleasure, but once it's gone, then if you hold it to such high regard of like fulfilling you, and once it's gone, it's gonna put you back in a pain cycle, because now it's like, oh, I just lost my pleasure and what just brought me happiness and whatever. And it's like that joy and peace should always stay intact within you, regardless of what you have or don't have on the outside.
Yeah, it's like when you don't identify with all of that, that's where joy is.
Right.
And another little section, it's on the top of 30. He was saying, and what is often referred to as love may be pleasurable and exciting for a while, but it's an addictive, clinging, and extremely needy condition that can turn into its opposite at the flick of a switch.
Right.
So a lot of times people may think the love is there, but there's no opposite of love, essentially, is what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
There's only an opposite of pleasure.
Right.
Which is pain.
Right. The love is there. Love is always there.
Right.
But it's like, if it's like putting so much weight on the outside pleasure.
Right.
And the pleasure of the moment of falling in love and like being attached to this person and all of that, you get lost in that. And then so when something goes wrong, it's like, oh, all the love is gone.
Right.
It's just done. Like, and it's like, no, you lost the pleasure part of it. It's not new anymore. It's not, so it's like that is, it's a different thing that I think a lot of people have been made to believe it is.
Yeah, because everybody, well, not everybody, but it's common for people to seek something outside of them, as far as like even like the relationship. Like the most common thing people says is like, you complete me and all of that type of thing.
Oh yeah.
That's not what it is. Like, you don't look for a partner to complete you. You look for someone to complement you.
I think even more than that, it's just finding somebody to live your life. It's almost like living your life with, but you have two completely separate lives. You're two complete whole people. And it's like you're just, choosing that person to live your life with and experience life with. But it's definitely not about completing each other.
Yeah.
You are complete already. So don't look for somebody to complete you.
Right.
Like, you have to come to the table whole and, live life together.
Yeah.
So
experiencing this beautiful world that we have, this beautiful life consciousness
yes.
together.
Yeah. So, yeah, I know you said on the last section. So we're at the last section here. I mean, we're already on the last section, but was there something at the very end that you said really stood out? Stood out to you? Just real quick, because we'll wrap up here. But
so, I mean, this goes back to, this is what mentioned earlier, just about the polar opposite between the power of now and Think and Grow Rich, where it really hit me when at the bottom of 30 he said that the Buddha says that pain or suffering arises through desire or craving, and that to be free of pain we need to cut the bonds of desire. It stood out to me big time because in Think and Grow Rich, having a strong desire is really the theme of the book, because with a strong desire comes the constant thinking, the believing, the feeling of what you want and what you want to be. And it kind of made me think about, like, wow, like it's like, it's not necessarily like who you believe, but it's just like, what do you take from both sides of it to fit the way you want it to fit in your life? Mm-hmm. And it really stood out to me.
Yeah, that line right there stood out to me as well. And I think, again, it just comes down to the detachment piece. Because when you desire and you crave something, it's like you feel like, it's almost like that incomplete thing. It's like you feel incomplete without it. Like you become so obsessive about it that it's like you need it to feel okay and feel fulfilled. And it's like anything that you're craving or wanting that bad, when you get it, it's like for that moment, it's like pleasurable. It's like you feel like, oh man, finally I got what I wanted and all that stuff. And then it's like right after that moment, it starts just dissipating, and then now you got another craving coming.
Right.
Like you're always constantly in that pursuit of fulfillment.
Yeah.
That is outside of you. And he's saying, check that, because the fulfillment is from within you. You can never become fulfilled from the completely fulfilled and whole from the outside.
Right.
Because you're always going to be craving and seeking something. Is always something else. And I think that's where the suffering comes, because it's like, it's never enough. It's never enough. Like, I need more. Right. I want something else. Like, and so that just puts you into a cycle of never ending craving and desiring, and but I think there is a balance there. I think that helps push people along and like achieve goals and things like that. So, but I think it's just a fine line of knowing that you should not be attached to those things in a way where you feel like if you don't have them, then you are not complete.
Right.
So yeah,
it makes me think about, because it just popped in my head that like people have like this huge misunderstanding about like rich people, very wealthy, famous people committing suicide and like being just completely miserable in their lives. And they're like, how can you be this miserable and you have everything?
Yeah, you have everything. Right.
That's exactly the whole thing, is that they may have been so identified with what they have, they never took the time to just look within themselves and have the fulfillment within them, to feel whole and just have the outside wealth as well.
Yeah, and not being attached to that.
Right.
And not finding your value in that.
Right.
Your value is within
within you.
Within you. We have said that phrase, I don't know how many times this episode, but yeah.
I guess we'll name this,
Right.
this episode
Within.
From Within.
The power within. The SpongeBob episode. The power within. That's pretty much what this episode.
I bet the episode hit different now.
Right. I'm like, I'm with you. The power within. But all right, y'all, we gotta wrap this up. Thank you if you have listened this far. We appreciate it for sticking with us and listening to our thoughts about the book. We're processing as we're going along.
Yeah.
But if you want to join us, please grab a copy of The Power of Now. Order it through Amazon or any other places you can find if you're not to Amazon. But yeah,
anywhere you want to get it.
Yeah, and then just join us here. We'll be talking about it.
Yeah, let us know what you think in the comments.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to kind of just think because I mean, our inspiration of doing this podcast in the first place is having these type of conversations.
Yes. And
it's time to get back into that.
Yeah, we're working our way back into our original idea for the podcast. Like Ryan said, just having these kind of conversations, because we have these conversations all the time, so we just want to kind of share the space with other people. Yeah. So but yeah, thank you guys. We're gonna head out. This was Kristyn B and
Ryan.
So we'll talk to y'all later.
Yep. Oh yeah, by the way, everything is in the description. If you want to connect with us, our social medias is down there, so check them out and like and comment.
Yes, come follow us.
All right, guys, we'll see you.